Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Future is Bilingual podcast. My name is Heather. Today's interview is with Mali. She is a half French, half Lao mom of 3 young adults, and she's been living for the past 20 years in Spain. So she brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to the table in regards to raising multilingual children, multicultural children, and we get into all that in our discussion. We have a very open, candid conversation about struggles and what's changed over the past 20 years with raising multilingual kids, but we also have a lot of laughs and we go on some interesting language tangents. So we hope that you will enjoy this conversation and get a lot out of it. We did record more than I have been able to keep in the episode, so I may bring Mali back for another specialized episode. I don't want to make any big promises yet, but you can look for that in the future. I will keep you guys posted. And without further ado, let's hear our conversation. Welcome, Mali.
Thank you for having me to your podcast.
It's my pleasure. So why don't we start by you telling us a little bit about yourself and who is in your family?
Well, I'm Mali, as we said before. My full name is Malitian. I'm half French, half Laos, from Laos, and my family lives in Madrid. My husband is Spanish, and my 3 children are French, Spanish, and Lao. But we live in Madrid for more than 20 years now, so we basically mostly speak Spanish, and my children live in quite an international environment because of their school. So the challenge was to maintain the French, actually.
Yeah. What kind of school is it? Can you tell us
it's
about
it? It's an IB school. It's an international school. So it's not bilingual. It's fully English.
Oh, wow.
So they started when they were 3.
Wow.
And now, well, my children, they're 18 and 14. So they're learning language. The educational language was English, is English still.
Right. And then the community was Spanish.
The community was Spanish. I am here the only French in the house, who speaks French, because with my husband, we speak Spanish as well. His French is very low level.
Yeah.
So yes, that's the choice of having English instead of French was a bit risky at the time, actually, I have to say.
Yeah. Was there an option? Are there French schools in Spain?
Yes. There's the Lycée Français, which is a big establishment, and a lot of even Spanish people go there to have a French education. And that's actually was my first choice too. When my older daughter was in age to go to school, we thought, my husband and I, to put her in the French school. But because of some, I used to say, commute problem, and
it was too far.
Yeah, exactly. We just decided, well, maybe I can teach her French, and she can go to an English school or international school. And because of her personality as well, she was very shy, and so we wanted some a more homey structure. I'm not saying that French school was not homey. It's just that it's a very big school.
Yeah, well, there are some, I guess I could call them stereotypes, but even I've heard French people say that French school is, kind of strict. And if you make one mistake, I don't know how it is in schools abroad, but I've heard.
Yeah. I don't know, because at the end I never put her in that school. Right. But that's what I was a bit scared as well. I wanted something more where the child well-being was
like
more
child focused.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So definitely was the IB system, even if in kindergarten, is more open to that. So that was it's a bit of how you say that casualty.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people compare like English schools or American schools, how they're a lot of expats that will say like, oh, they're focused on like, it's okay if you make a mistake and we're going to help you. And we have all these mentalities of like, it's not a fail, it's your first attempt in learning. And
Yeah, exactly.
it's just a different mentality.
And it's a different focus. Yeah,
exactly. But before we get too far, Molly, were you born in France?
Yes, I was born in France.
Okay, so born and raised. And one of your parents is from Laos?
Yeah, my dad is from Laos. And we moved to Laos when I was 2 years old.
Wow.
And then, yes, because my dad is a surgeon, was a surgeon. Now he's, of course, retired.
Good for him.
So he studied in France. He met my mom. They get married. And then they have my brother. I have two siblings, but at that time, just my brother and I were born, and we moved to Laos. But that was in 74, 75. And then I don't know if you know a bit of history of Indochina, but then the communists enter and they had to go back to France.
Yeah. Oh.
So yes, that's the story of a lot of refugee family.
Yeah.
When they get to France, when I get to France, but my dad, as a surgeon, I said, was working a lot of hours with weekends and sometimes evenings.
Yeah.
So basically, and my mom was a nurse. So, so I was mostly raised between my cousin that went out of Laos as well, with and the nanny. So
yeah,
the focus was on, we had to speak French because my cousin needed to go to school in France and integrated in French. So the little things I learned when I was 2-3 years old, I just forgot.
Oh, wow. And how long were you in Laos? Just a few years?
Yeah, just 1 year or something.
Oh, just one year. Oh, wow.
Yeah. But at this age, when you're in total immersion in a language, you just learn it.
Right.
And so I was apparently talking and understanding everything. I was an early speaker.
Yeah, I have one of those as well.
And yes, so that's a bit my, how you say,
your story.
Story, and that what made me a bit sad is that I forgot totally my Lao language.
Have you ever tried to learn it? Have you ever taken classes since?
Well, with my dad when I was 15, which was a disaster, I have to say.
No.
Because he didn't have the patience and the methodology.
Yeah.
So.
This is very common. I'm still learning my husband's native tongue. And this happens to a lot of us where we think that, oh, okay, I'll just learn it through my partner, through my boyfriend or my girlfriend or whoever. And like, they're not teachers and they're not taught how to teach this, So I would ask him things and he's like, I don't know. Like, I don't want to talk about grammar. He hated grammar in school. And a lot of us expect like the people closest to us, like, oh, you can teach me, but it's not always the best method.
No.
We learn the hard way.
I'm 48, so I'm talking a long time ago, 30 years ago. And now I think we have more information about how children are becoming bilingual or multilingual, how to expose them to those languages. When I was a child, there was not much information. Right. Even when my children were younger, I was talking to a friend as well, and she was telling me, because her daughter is 20 like mine, we didn't have, I wish I had a podcast who gave me all those tricks and advice. I was a bit trying the things and doing what I thought was good at that time. So I guess my dad thought that he was doing the good thing, and I'm convinced, but it was not effective. No.
Yeah, I think a lot of us assume, especially if we are bilingual, we just assume that we can speak the language and the kid will pick it up. And then, more and more now we're realizing that doesn't happen, that the majority language takes over very easily. And there is a lot more research and just resources out there.
I guess that at that time, what we were lacking of resources. I need to go to France and buy all those DVDs, and well, there was not even DVD when my
Right.
daughter was was 3 or
Cassette tapes.
yeah, it was those VHS,
Oh yeah.
and the system was different, so she
Yeah.
was watching all those movies in black and white.
Right.
Not
It was
very
just so much,
appealing for 3 years old.
but it's so much harder to get than now. I can just turn on YouTube and they can watch
Exactly.
Polish, French, English. We just change the language as we want in my house with a click of a button. So
Yeah, exactly. That's amazing.
for
So
free. Yeah, it's not the same
yeah.
at all. But I also think mentalities have changed where, back in even just 20 years ago, the mentality was that kids need to have the majority language, even immigrant parents should speak the majority language to their children. Like there was that, those myths are still persistent today, I think. But
Yes,
it's changing slowly.
that's exactly what happened in my family when my cousin came. I was 6 years old when my cousin came to live with us. Cousins, so we were 6 kids at home. That was very fun.
Yeah, for the kids.
For the kids, yes. But my parents were just focusing on them to learn French. So my dad definitely never talked to us in Lao when I was a child, because he wanted them to be completely fluent in French, and
Right.
and I guess they forgot a lot of their Lao written skills as well, and
Yeah,
and so
I can imagine.
it's a different. I think it's a different. Yeah, it's a different perspective. But as you say, even 20 years ago here in Spain, when I was talking French to my daughter, I remember my pediatrician telling me, "Oh, well, maybe she's gonna be, how you say that, a late talker because
Exactly.
you send her to an English school and she needs to learn Spanish because she lives in Spain." And I said, "Oh my God."
Yeah. And that still happens today. I'm in a lot of groups for parents of bilingual kids, or a lot of people that are even just pregnant on there asking. And every day there's somebody saying, the pediatrician told us we should only speak the one language, and everybody's commenting back, no, 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 no. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I'm not
still.
even very convinced about, when until 4 or 5, I was just talking to them in French, of course. But then when they start school, it was more difficult because they had many language interacting.
Yeah.
And as at home we're speaking Spanish, sometimes my Spanish is quite good. So I was just answering them in Spanish, but that doesn't mean that now they don't speak French and they don't write French and they're perfectly trilingual.
Yeah. So fast forward, you had the 3-year-old, the pediatrician telling you not to speak French, and now that 3-year-old is 20. So you said they're perfectly trilingual.
Yes. So,
all 3 of them, they're able to.
Well, the youngest has a lower level because she's 14 and she's been, well, I don't know how many children do you have, but the third one is always going behind the brothers, and and they're speaking Spanish between each other. And actually, she's the one who mix more all languages. My 2 oldest, they're fine. They understand, they speak, they write, they read.
Yeah.
But my little one, she makes more the languages.
And she's still young. So tell us more about teaching them French, because I think a lot of parents listening maybe have younger kids, and I myself have younger kids. My kids are 3.5 and 2. And we want to know, like, how do we succeed in getting our kids to speak the minority language? Especially, I think your case is extra difficult because you had not only one language working against you, you had the community plus a different school language, plus you're the only French speaker.
Yes. So
tell us about that.
So I have to say, it's not happening like by magic. No, it's a lot of to be constant, I think, in your efforts and perseverant. You need to do it. It's not happening one day to another. You have to establish routines. For me, it worked like that. No, even if you can go out of the routine, of course, but For example, I only read them in French. All, like the night bedtime reading
Stories, yeah.
was in French. So of course, then when they start learning how to read in both language, in Spanish and English, I felt the pressure of the teacher even, no, that told me, oh, you need to read them in English or you need to read them in Spanish. But no, I stick to my French because that actually was one of the few moments in the day where they listen to the French language.
Yeah. And that was
So
something it was consistent, you could control it.
exactly.
It's a constant. So like, don't change it. If it's working, don't mess with it.
Exactly. Don't mess with it.
Yeah.
No, and it's established in the time as well of your day.
Yes. Yeah.
Especially when they're young. No, it can be in the morning, it can be in the afternoon, doesn't matter. But it's like brushing your teeth.
Yeah, routines are so helpful for sure.
Yes, and playing. I play a lot of games in French with
that's
them.
That's good.
Yeah, because I'm grateful to have a job that allow me to spend a lot of time with my kids and be able to play with them. Board games. Board games are fantastic to develop the language in general. No? So I play a lot of board games in French with them. Even now, we're still playing. I mean, they're grown up, but
that's so nice.
Yeah, with this confinement,
right?
That was great. So we play Monopoly. We still play in French. So you have the numbers, you have questions, you have all kind of vocabulary that they were developing at that time.
That is such a good point. Yeah, that games can be such a fun. Yeah, they're not thinking about it. They have to use the language.
They don't even think that they're learning, that they're speaking French. So I was so fascinated by games that to help with the language that now I'm creating games for French teacher and parents who wants
that's great.
So those typical games that they can use to, to what I was saying, to learn vocabulary, to the bingos, the lottos, So my kids were kind of guinea pigs. How you say that?
You say guinea pig. Yeah.
For me, so that's what I did with my children. I mean,
they benefited from that.
Yeah, I played a lot with them and I read because I think reading make the vocabulary and the structure of the language, the musicality of the language stick in your head.
Reading is so important, and I'm trying personally as an adult to read more in my target languages because I've fallen into a rut of just reading in English. When I was doing my studies, there was a point in my undergrad where I had not read an English book for like years because I was only reading in French and I was so focused on French. And now it's totally flipped and I'm only reading in English, and like, okay, I really got to read like a novel in French again because it's just been a long time. And
and it's because it's the same for me. I mean, when I want to read for pleasure, I just go and read in French because it's much easier now. As a parent working, you don't have so much time.
Exactly.
And something that is easy that you want to enjoy without too much effort.
Yeah, but there's so much in reading and just
it is.
Yeah, the vocab. Like I was reading in English last night and just thinking about all these words, and I'm like, gosh, I would not know how to say all these. I don't know, just these specific words that were in there. I'm trying to think. It was like bramble. I don't know. It was just a very stylistic way of writing, and I was thinking, wow, this is like, it's just so rich. And of course, we're talking about adult literature, but starting that with your kids young and then progressing with them as they can read, from the picture book when they're a baby to the book with a few words to sentences to chapter books, all the way up. I think it's a really important.
It's really nice. And as well, what is in when you read to your kids, it's very important to make it as a theater, like you're playing, all those expression and
the voices.
Then there's the voices and exactly. So I think this as well helps a lot with the learning of the reading in general. Even if you know how to read in one language, in your own language or mother tongue language, then it will be easier for the kid to read in other language as well. it's not a block. It's not separate. The child brain is using one skill to apply it to the other language. It's not
Exactly.
separate.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge mentality shift, maybe thanks to research that's happened, where I feel like we used to believe that, you know, a bilingual person only had like half a brain in each language, and now we're realizing no, you know, they're
No.
not like, there's not a limited space in the brain that this language is using up where the other language is not going to have the space for. You know, I feel like it's just a mentality shift that we're now realizing that
Yeah,
having
because
skills in your first language is going to help you learn the second language, you know,
exactly.
yeah, it's just, it's so good that there's been so much research and it's ongoing. But I find those studies so fascinating, how just
me too.
literacy and
exactly. That's why I like to listen to your blog. Actually, I find out of your blog in that Facebook group, and I like to listen experience and how, even if my children are older, I mean, you see that what the evolution and because now, for example, I think they need to take responsibility to maintain their French because they're old enough, especially my daughter and my son. They're old enough. So what they do, I mean, they switch their phone to the French. So they have like, they have to read in French, no? Or now my daughter, she wants to, because she never been to a French school, she wants to pass the French test, no? The DELF. Because she needs, it's not enough, no, not to prove that she speaks French, that her mom is French. So she wants to have a certification. So all those things, I mean, they come later when they realize that a language needs to be nurtured.
Yes.
To be, you just, because otherwise it will happen like me. When I learned Lao at 3 years old, I never practiced it again. You forgot it. So you need to nurture constantly, even when they're children, when they're young, you need to give them books, give them, as you said, switching languages on when they watch a movie, a cartoon, or so everything.
Yeah, we have so many ways now to nurture it. And I liked how Amy, one of my previous guests, said it's like a plant. Like you need to water, you know, the minority language. If you don't water it, the majority language will take over. You know, we have, take care of it, nurture it. So did you ever take trips back to France with them? You guys are you're close, you're in Madrid.
Yeah, we're in Madrid. We well, now this past year we didn't go as often, but we're going at least 3 times a year. Yeah, Christmas, summer holidays, and what I did was sending them to French camp as well.
Okay.
So that's
for summer
as well. Yeah, because I wanted, because here in Madrid, even if the French community is quite big, there is a lot of French people. As my kids are not going to the French school, we're not living in a French friendly neighborhood. I think in my neighborhood I'm the only French. So all this makes that they don't have contact, even if they do have a couple of friends that are French, but they speak English, they speak Spanish.
Right.
So I send them to be with young people so they can talk.
Yeah. You know, how long were those camps?
2 weeks during the year.
Nice.
Yeah, and they grasp all those vocabulary that is fun for them.
Yeah, it's so different having peers and having, you know, if you're just speaking to mom, that's one motivation. But yeah. Are your parents still in France?
Yes.
And your siblings and everybody?
Yeah, everybody. Well, my brother now, he's moving to Thailand now. But yes, wow. we are a traveler family. But now, yes, they're all in France.
Yeah, so they had all that family to interact with as well.
Exactly.
Phone calls and things.
Yes, they share with my mother. They talk. My mother teach them to play Scrabble. Oh, she loves that. So that's the activity with the grandma.
It's great. Yeah. So board games are a big hit That's,
In my house,
think
it's
yeah.
an institution.
That's a good tip, though. I think a lot of parents, maybe even with little ones, we don't really think about that yet. They're just
they're very young, but
they're not there.
You can start to play memory.
Yes,
we flip flashcards.
Yeah, things you can do, pre-literacy skills, and then of course these same games, when they start to write, you can say, things that start with the letter F. You can have them write them down. There's so many ways to build on these skills.
And especially we used to drive we're still driving, but now everybody is with his phone. They're not playing anymore with me. We used to drive 10 hours to France.
Oh my gosh.
That's a lot of time to play.
Oh yes.
And sing songs as well. All those little songs that so yes, definitely it's you have more resources now.
So speaking of your family being stuck in a car, how is the situation with, you're with your kids, but you're also with your husband? Do you still speak French? Do you guys switch to Spanish? So I know I always have this question because we are minority language at home. So once my husband's home, we all speak Polish. But I always wonder with Opal, like people who have the one parent, one language, like what happens when they're all together? Is it just a mix? Are you speaking French and he's speaking Spanish, and then you're speaking Spanish to him?
I found it very difficult for communication, for family communication.
Yeah.
But my husband French is, he can understand and have a conversation, but it's not natural. When you start speaking to someone in one language, it's very difficult to switch.
Yes.
It was easier for us we always speak Spanish, so for our communication as a couple, as a family, it's Spanish. So when he's here, we switch. And of course, because we are in a Spanish environment, when I'm in France, I'm not switching so much.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I guess I have the weight of the responsibility for the language in my family. Because when we're in France and I'm surrounded by French, my people in the street, my family speaking French, TV, everything in French. So even if I speak to him in Spanish, if I'm speaking French to my mom or my kids, I'm talking to him in French as well. I admire people who are strictly Opal. I don't know how they do that.
I don't know how they would do it either. Maybe I'll get someone on the podcast who can tell us.
Well, I know some people that I have friends who speak French to their children, and their husband is Spanish, and they speak French to their children all the time, and they're surprised when I speak Spanish to my children. And you can have some judgment in the other way as well. Why are you speaking Spanish to your children? You should talk to them in French, otherwise they will forget their French. Don't speak French. But sometimes communication and is easier.
To each their own. I think we all do what feels best and right for us, and it's easy to judge from the outside. And that's why there's so many ways to raise children bilingually, because there's not a one size fits all.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. And because and you can't force the child as well to speak one language. I guess it's sometimes I have friends said, I want him to answer me in the minority language. If I talk to him in the minority language, sometimes they will answer you in Spanish or in English. And
it's a very fine line between like being forceful and
you can have the opposite effect. I mean, that the child don't want to talk in French.
There's a lot of affective factors where the whole feeling that they get of the language, and just the atmosphere, the mood, everybody's kind of, if they're feeling judged, if we're overcorrecting, there's all these sorts of things that can be at play, which is why it's so important if you want to raise bilingual children. I think you do need to do a little bit of research, just how do kids learn two languages? It's tricky. It's not going to just happen on its own, unfortunately.
Exactly.
If it were, there'd be a lot more bilingual people walking around the United States. This is a country of immigrants. However, most people just melted into the English melting pot. And it's so common to hear like, oh yeah, my grandpa is from Italy, or my grandpa's from, that country. We meet so many Polish, heritage people, but they don't speak a word of Polish. It's so common here. So I think that's proof that it doesn't just happen automatically.
No, it doesn't. And when I was answering your question, that's what it made me, how you say, made me reflect on my progress now with my children, on how all the process, and it doesn't happen automatically. You definitely need to put effort on it, and consciously making the switch to French, or, as I said, to have some kind of routine.
Right.
Otherwise, and in my case, I give them classes, like formal classes, because French is so difficult. Well, I guess Polish as well. I don't know, to write.
Well, especially it's got the difficulty of, like, Spanish grammar is difficult, so is French grammar, but then French has the added difficulty of nothing is phonetically spelt the way you think it would be. So if they're not immersed in that language, it would be hard. Even native French. I taught English to elementary school children for 2 years in France, and I just remember like different things that they had to learn. Like the difference between A and A, like EST versus ET. Like, to me, I always learned, I learned it as starting at 12, it was academic. So I would never mess those two words up, unless it was like a typo. But to a native French ear, they sound exactly the same. The different endings, like, is it a T? Is it an X? Is it an S? Because you don't hear them. Like, je crois, y crois.
Exactly.
So I was so surprised, like, oh, like native speakers have to like practice these
as
things.
Well.
Right. So French definitely has that added challenge. So even if they're fluent, they can speak it.
Yes, exactly. It's different to write it, to speak it.
Oh, speaking of writing, did your children learn to write in Spanish or English first?
Good question. English.
English?
I think. Yeah, English. English or both at the same time, actually. I can't say, I don't remember. But yes, as they had, the education was mainly in English, but they had Spanish classes.
Oh, okay.
So,
and your husband was, I'm sure, reading to them in Spanish and all sorts of,
yes, exactly, and
exposure to Spanish.
They have exactly the exposure to Spanish is strong. When you walk in the street, you'll see, or you have the newspaper on the table. It's in Spanish. I mean, you have different. Well, I didn't let them read the newspaper when they were 3 on the.
No, but still.
But you have the milk on the table is in Spanish, or
leche, and Spanish is completely phonetic. I just was thinking it would probably have been easiest to start with Spanish because there's consistent. This letter is pronounced like this.
And the methodology to learn is different, but at the same time, as Spanish is very phonetic, it's similar to the phonics in English. So the difficulty was more to teach them. Well, actually, when they learn 1-2 language, they read quite easily in the 3rd language, or maybe because I was teaching them, I was reading them, in French.
Yeah. I'm sure they were listening and seeing how, once they were interested in words, they would follow.
They were just reading without, I never teach them to read in French. They just start to read, and I correct them when they don't pronounce something.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Well, but that's what the children do naturally. That's what we were saying before. When you learn how to master one language, then you can apply the same
skills. Yeah, they already had those skills.
Exactly.
That's so important, because if they don't have the skills at all, there's this whole problem of illiteracy. It's not like they can just grab them out of thin air. They have to learn them in some language. But once they
Yes.
have them, they can apply them. So I think that's so interesting that, the knowledge is already in them. They've done it they've done this process once, and they can just be like, oh, okay, let's switch gears. Let's try another one. It's so interesting.
Yes.
What was your greatest challenge teaching them these different languages?
My greatest challenge is to have her writing, reading skills, as I would not pretend as good as her two other language, but at least at a correct level where she doesn't make mistakes when she writes and know how to conjugate her verbs, written, because orally it's fine. And that's, for me, was the challenge, because I was reading to them until they were 6 or 7. Then I stopped reading to them, obviously, at night. But we always talk, no? We talk about, I always had this little moment in French with them, even if I'm not reading. But yes, definitely that's, for me, the challenge, to have the written skills. Because when you will see, when your kids are getting older at school, and especially because the school was a third language that we were not talking at home, I definitely privilege them to write and read in English by themselves. So it was like, and then they had to read Spanish, because we're in Spain, and part of their education is in Spain, and then their father is Spanish, and then French was like an added, and I didn't want to be a burden. So that was my biggest challenge.
Yeah.
And now I think they see the advantage. As I said, now they're old enough to take responsibility for their learning, and they see the future that can give them a third language, and so they put more effort. But between the age of 8, 9, and 12, 13, it's hard.
Oh boy.
No, for me, it's my experience, because you have all those changing in teenager years, and the schools and friends take a lot of place in their leisure. No, they were not playing so much with me. They were more playing with their friends. No, that's normal. So
that's how it happens. I'm wondering did you do anything specific in the house to support English, or was that 100% left to the school and you guys focused on Spanish and French in the house?
Yes, that was exactly like that.
And it worked out fine. Their English, school took care of that.
Yeah, school, and because now, as you said, you just put YouTube, and they had all those video, and my kids never watched nothing in Spanish, barely. It's all in English. Their leisure, their friends, the privilege of being in an international school is that you can communicate with all your friends from Arabic, Asia, wherever, in English.
Your kids have the 3 powerhouse. They can really travel anywhere with English, Spanish, and French.
Speaking of travel, they're not conscious about their privilege. I hope that now they are. But sometimes when they were younger, I thought of torturing them, teaching them another language.
Oh, geez.
Just to have this feeling that it's not natural for everybody.
To go through the process again, because they weren't probably conscious of learning all it just came naturally.
That they were learning without even noticing. So
well, maybe on their own they'll take up a 4th language and struggle, as most of us do.
Yes, like you with the Polish.
Yes. Years of struggle. What about for you, Molly? Because we talked about your kids a lot, but what was it like for you when did you start learning Spanish? When did you start learning English?
Well, I learned English and Spanish at school. You know the French system a little bit. So, at my time, at least we start the language in middle school. So I start very late, 11, to learn English. And then there you have to have a second language, so third language.
Yeah, third.
So I choose Spanish.
Mm-hmm. Did you also do Latin?
Yes.
Yeah, that was the Americans are always shocked. Like, we just learn one foreign language. The minimum is 2 years. And then we hear about the French, like, oh, you have your two
Latin.
foreign languages in middle school plus Latin. Plus you got to keep doing French.
Yep. But you learn and you don't learn, because in my times, at least, it was not. I always loved the languages. So for me, I put more effort now in it.
There's definitely, I don't know how it was back then. I just know when I studied abroad in France, I did a lot of translation, thème et version. So going from French to English, English to French. I also, I did a year of Arabic at Université de Rennes, so in the capital of Brittany. And it was so much translation. It was a lot about civilization. It was not like practical language use at all. I think we had one class with a doctoral student. One semester was from a girl from Syria. And then they switched us after, 5 months, they switched us to a Tunisian, which is a totally different dialect. And like, we were all just getting comfortable with her dialect. And that was like a very useful speaking, getting used to like spoken, because I don't know if you know about Arabic, but there's modern standard, which nobody speaks like that except for the news. So then we had this 1 hour of dialect, which was so useful. And then they switched dialects on us mid-year. And I was like, oh my gosh, what? Like, this is crazy. Like, how are we ever going to learn? Yeah.
I study at university English, Spanish, and economics. But yes, that's exactly what you said. We had the translation, when I take this text or article from a newspaper and translate it. I think now it's completely useless. You have Google Translate to do that.
Right. I was there 10 years ago. That's what we were doing.
I
could barely order a coffee in Arabic, and I was translating an article about this, a movie coming out. And I was like, I'm looking up every word in a dictionary. Like, it was so tedious and pointless, as you say.
Yes, I guess the speaking part is left behind a lot. I mean, and I still, as a teacher now, I can still have some parents asking me, especially with their 8 years old kids, I want them to write and read French perfectly. And for me, it's okay, but a language you have to speak.
Yeah.
When you speak, you will read and write perfectly.
Exactly.
But you can't do it the other way around. But
exactly. I think a lot of us go about language learning the wrong way. I did. I started learning Polish grammar when I couldn't speak Polish, and nothing made sense. Nothing stuck.
Exactly.
And now when I go back to grammar now, I've recently kind of gone back and I'm taking classes, and now I'm fluent or close. I can speak, and everything, it makes sense. I'm like, oh yeah, I've heard this in context. This now I know why. And it's just, when kids learn, they're coming to school at 5 or 6. They've had 6 years of that language at home, theoretically, where they've heard it.
And for children now, they change. At least in my class, I definitely don't listen to that special parent, but because I'm not. This is not how I think. You learn a language. A language, you need to speak a language to be alive, to this language, to stick and to be alive. Otherwise, it's not. You better learn something or other skill. I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard for it to stick in your brain if you don't have the spoken and the oral, like the listening comprehension and the speaking. That's some ability. It's gonna, any reading and writing, all the reading and writing I did in Arabic is gone. I can tell you, if I could pull out the papers, if I still have them, but I could maybe sound it out, but like, I did not learn anything by pulling words out of a dictionary.
No, exactly. And that's how my dad wanted to teach us, no? And it was a huge mistake. I think it's a mistake. And so going back to my experience, I definitely start to be more fluent when I start traveling and spending time in English speaking country or Spanish English countries. And that's why for a long time people used to say the only way of learning a language is to go to the country to speak the language. Now, no, you don't need to do that.
We have a lot of resources.
Yeah, exactly.
Access.
The world is global now, so it's for good and for bad, but this definitely help. You can practice your Polish even if you're not in Poland.
Right.
Before you had to go to Poland.
Yeah. It'd be so hard to find even just listening resources. You know,
Exactly.
all you had was books.
Yeah, that's why I think during a long time that was the norm. You know, if you like the exchange, the immersions, of course, I mean, they're still very useful.
Oh, yeah. But if you can't afford it, or if you're living through a global pandemic, you don't need travel.
Exactly. Oh, this pandemic. Oh.
Yeah, I know. So which countries have you traveled to? And I'm wondering as well if you've traveled back to Laos at all.
No, I haven't. I didn't return because during a lot of, well, my dad is a political refugee, so
okay.
Banned from Laos.
Yes.
Situation hasn't changed, but Laos is Thai is very close to Lao language, so he can go to Thailand and we go to Thailand, but we don't speak the language. And I travel. Well, I went to the States, to England a lot, Spain, and I lived during a long time in French Guiana when I was young.
Wow.
So we were traveling a bit around South America. And
that's such a cool experience.
Yes, it was nice. And obviously when I came here, I speak with a South American accent with.
Oh, yeah.
I learned Spanish from there. I didn't learn Spanish from Spain. So I didn't do all those theta.
Just the vosotros must have been weird for you as well.
Yes, exactly. The tú here, they say tú
to everybody.
To everybody. And I remember a funny thing that I didn't know how to do the theta, no? So the theta is, for those who listen and don't speak Spanish, it's the C that you pronounce th.
Yeah. And, so in Mexico it would be cinco, 5, and in Spain it'd be cinco.
Yeah, and so I didn't know where to put it, and I just put it everywhere. So I was like, "See,"
yeah,
and Spanish people were making fun of me. And it was a disaster.
But this is a language learning technique, and I also have done it. So kids will overgeneralize, and you know, for English they would say like he goed. And things like that. So they overgeneralize the ed because they've heard, you know, other words. All these irregulars they have to learn. I've done this as well, where I was overgeneralizing rules in Polish, and I was just putting them everywhere. And it was like, no, this isn't this. You know, these are different cases. So I think it's a very normal technique.
Yeah,
it's very natural.
Normal. Yeah.
When you're trying to learn, you're like, oh, I better use this.
Yeah, once you learn it, you just want to put it everywhere. So
and have you gotten now the Spain accent, or are you still speaking with more of a Latin American?
No. I have the Spanish, the Madrileñan accent, actually.
Yeah. After 20 years, I can imagine.
Yes. And when I go to other part of Spain, sometimes, especially in Andalusia, where they have this very strong accent, I love it, but it's like, for me, sometimes it takes me time to understand what they say, because they're eating a lot of words and.
Well, every Spanish-speaking country has their way of doing things, and even like you're saying, parts of Spain have their different accents. It is very rich,
like and like maybe every country, and they have accent. In France, you don't speak the same in Paris, but the difference is less, I have to say.
Which part of France are you from?
The south. I'm from Montpellier.
Oh, okay.
I was born there, and then we traveled a lot with my parents. We moved a lot. We moved in France, and then we went to French Guiana for 5-6 years. Wow. So.
And this is kind of unrelated, but in South America, do they use vos? So I was in Costa Rica, and I was learning all about this thing, vos, that we never learn about in American schools because they only teach us pretty much Mexican Spanish or Spain Spanish. sometimes they'll do
Yeah.
the whole vosotros so that we know
I
it.
think the vos is more. I didn't know about Costa Rica, but I know
Argentina.
Argentinian, Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay. They use the vos.
Hmm.
The vos
Yeah.
that is uh, usted, vosotros,
Hmm.
and
And
they
yeah,
don't
just,
use usted. I think. I don't know.
yeah, I think it's like I don't know. So my Spanish teacher in Costa Rica was saying just how other countries will use, like Spain uses tú so much. And she was like, we don't use that. I would use usted with my baby, with my dog. And I'm like, what? You use the
And
formal? Like, it just seemed so weird, especially Americans. We don't even have these formalities. Everybody is just you.
yes,
And I know them. I know them in French. I know them in Spanish. From what I had learned, I know them in Polish. But it's like to hear that she would use usted with her dog and her baby. I was like, oh wow,
yes,
it's
and
so
in
different.
Spain, it's just the opposite. They barely use usted
Usted.
now in the speaking
Hmm.
language.
Yeah, it's so
When I first
fascinating.
came here, I said usted to people, and they were just like, "I'm not that old."
Yeah. Oh,
That's what they told
it's
me.
it's so tricky. I know it's such a fine line because
Mm-hmm.
you want to be polite, and I always tell students with French, like, well, use vous until they tell you to use tu,
Tu.
and it's so tricky though, because then you could insult them and be like, well, I thought we were friends. Why are you using vous?
Yeah.
It's tricky. It's definitely, and every culture does it differently. In
Yes.
Polish, they have a thing similar to usted. They use the same
Mm-hmm.
he, she form, but they
Mm-hmm.
actually have to use the word Mr. and Mrs. And
Oh.
there's this American guy who speaks Polish from, he just learned it as an immigrant here. And
Mm-hmm.
it was just so funny. He was like, when he was like, do people actually live like this? Like constantly saying Mr. and Mrs. all the time.
That's
It just made me laugh because I was like, oh my gosh, that's totally the mentality. Americans were like, what? Like, how do you live like this?
no. It's like when I first came here, I was teaching adults
Mhm.
in companies, and so I was telling them, well, you have to say bonjour monsieur, bonjour
Yeah.
madame, merci monsieur, au revoir madame. I say, why are they so hypocrite?
Oh,
I said, it's not hypocrite, it's just the way it is.
yeah.
It's
Oh, yeah.
it's not, I don't want to say education because that doesn't mean that Spaniards are not educated.
Right.
It's just the way people,
Are raised.
the
Mhm.
rules,
Yeah.
the social rules.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe of course in Spain you will not say buenos días señor when someone,
Yeah.
you enter a store, nobody say.
Mhm.
Even I think when they say señora, I will feel like a bit offended.
Mm. Yeah, but that's so common in French. I also teach my students, and I was teaching adults at a
Mm,
senior center, and they were all, it's about traveling. This was before COVID. All of
yeah.
them, had time and money, and they all wanted to go to France.
Yes,
So I was like, it's
exactly.
so important. Please, do not forget the bonjour, madame, bonjour, monsieur,
Yes, exactly.
because
That's
that's
very
why
important.
they look at us as these rude people. We don't know the rules. That like, we come in the store and they're just like bonjour, and that seems so like rude
Mm,
to them.
yeah,
So.
exactly. You have to say. That's true. And
Or like
that's,
s'il vous plaît, like using the conditional, like je voudrais.
yeah. It happened to my children this summer actually.
Oh yeah.
That was very funny because this summer they went into to a cafe, and they just, here in Spain you can ask agua. When the waiter comes and say,
Oh.
what do you want, you just say water, and that's fine. You don't need to put anything else, or cerveza, or you don't even need to put please. Or so when
Mhm.
they went to that bar, and they say, oh, what do you want? De l'eau.
De l'eau. Uh-huh.
And the
Oh
three
boy.
of them wanted to low. So it was like the waiter looked at them like, oh, those kids, how rude
Yeah.
they are.
Hmm.
Not very well uh, mannered.
Yeah. Well, I think it's so important that, there's differences among cultures. There's differences among cultures that speak the same language. And I think
Mm,
it's good for us to know these little anecdotes, are so important. And especially for us as teachers, we both are working to help our students for if they ever go to these countries one day to not
hopefully.
offend. Yeah, exactly. Hopefully travel will open up at some point.
Yes,
And
when you teach a language, you teach a culture. No, it's
mhm,
opening. to a culture.
Exactly.
Whatever,
It's not
whichever.
that just putting a word in, that didn't work for
Exactly.
your kids to just put the French word in for agua.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, remember, you're in France.
Yes.
Mind your manners.
Yeah, I think it's a very important thing for us to
Yeah.
keep in mind. And also, if we're raising children bilingually and biculturally, I have the question, like, how do we do this if we're only in this one country? Like, how do I give them the culture of the other, language that they're learning?
Yes, I think what is important is if you had some family tradition that of your own family, or of your own country, of your own family, to maintain them. I mean, this is definitely very important. Yeah. I do the galette des rois, no? You can also call that
yeah, that just happened. The king's cake, I think we call it.
The king's cake, yeah. In Spain, it's a huge celebration, the Reyes, the kings. But it's not the same, celebrated the same way, not the same cake, of course, not the same tradition around, even if it's the same event, but it's not the same tradition. So I do that. I do the chandeleur, because my family, we love eating as well.
Yeah, I love this. Yeah, I love the chandeleur. I would do it with my French club.
So I do that with my kids. This day we just eat a lot of crepes.
Did you do any fortune telling with it, where you flip the thing? And,
yes, and the coin and everything, and or Easter. No, here in Spain they don't celebrate Easter as with a chocolate egg hunt and.
Oh, really?
No, it's a very sober. No, it's not sober, but it's a huge celebration here in Spain, Easter. But it's not as cute as in France. It's very religious. So I maintain those things because I think this is what I try to maintain.
So holding on to traditions.
Yeah, and it's kids love it. On top of that, I mean, this is something.
Of course. Yeah, these things haven't lasted centuries for no reason.
Exactly.
They're the thing that we look forward to.
Polish has a very nice Easter tradition, I thought, as well. No.
Yeah. Yes. So definitely, it's just because it's not my culture. I think it's hard for me to know, like, well, how do I impart this on them, because it's not my knowledge to impart.
Same here, yeah. And the traditions as well are on me.
Right.
For example, I can't transmit them. Here in Spain, the kings are the one who bring the present in Christmas, not Santa Claus, but Papa Noel. For me, it was really hard because it was not my tradition. So I can totally relate to what you're saying.
Yeah. And I think that's a whole other aspect of just blending two families' traditions. In some ways, it can be, maybe easier. You could go to France for the date of Christmas and then come back for January to do the Three Kings.
Yeah, that's what we were doing.
Yeah.
For 20 years.
In some ways, you can kind of blend them both. But I think in other ways, it does make it tricky. So the good with the bad, for sure.
Yeah.
Do you have any proud bilingual parenting moments that you'd like to share? Anything that sticks out?
Not one in particular, but definitely seeing my oldest, for example, she's studying in England, and when her teacher compliment her about her English written skill or something like that, or when I see my kids moving around the world before the pandemic, when we go to any place and they just can manage everywhere, asking for their way, or all those things are little thing that make you think, wow, well, that's not bad, no?
Yeah, we did it. Yeah,
we did it.
Pat myself on the back.
Yes, exactly. They feel comfortable everywhere. They can. On holiday, I'm not speaking of living, but I mean, they can go to Paris, they can go to Belgium, they can go and with the Spanish. And so you think, yes, it was a lot of effort. It was maybe sometimes, as you said, sometimes you feel overwhelmed, said, I need now to put the emphasis on the French, and they don't want to because they said, "Oh, I have too much work. Oh, I don't want to read in French. Oh, French classes at school are boring." All the things, and then you say, "Oh my God, what I'm going to do? They will never learn French." And then it happened that they learn French. They can go to a store, ask for whatever, and even study in a French country.
Yeah.
Maybe in my children, they're that they have this possibility and they considering it.
That's amazing. I think you're right. I think the proudest moment is just that you've done it. You've raised 3 trilingual kids, and you can just send them off and they can go and travel. They can pretty much go to any continent and do what they need to do. They can make their way.
Yes, exactly. That's when they get old. And when they were little, it was when my mom came to visit, she takes my 4 years old to be the translator, to go to buy the bread, or and then she was like, yes, that's cute. But that was part of their routine. I mean, I feel proud now when I see them being those multi-skilled people,
right?
And so my advice to parents who wants to raise their children bilingual or multilingual is to do it, definitely. to put a lot of work, patience, and perseverance, and to do it, because it's worth it at the end.
Yeah, get started. If you haven't started yet, it's not too late.
No, it's never too late.
You and I both learned. You learned English and Spanish late. I started French at 12. That was my first foreign language. So it's definitely not too late. If you're thinking your kid is 10 and you haven't started speaking your language, it's not too late.
No, exactly. And it's like in education, you don't have one way of educating your child. You have many ways of education. So,
and I've read some things recently. There's lots of good things coming out comparing like our kids better than adults, or teens, in that sense that no, not necessarily, because a teen or a young adult comes with all these skills of literacy. They have an entire language, so it's easier for them to understand concepts that are more abstract and all these things. That it's not true that like little kids are the best and you have to start when they're young.
No.
So you can definitely, if you're in that boat and you're wondering like, did I miss this boat? Am I too late? Do some Google research. You can find lots of good articles people have written that there are advantages to being an older learner like we were.
Yes, exactly.
And it's right. It's better late than never, as I always, that's one of my favorite proverbs that I have to learn in all my languages because I use it all the time,
No, yes, it's exactly that. No, it's question of starting and going on. And maybe you can start with very simple things.
Exactly.
Like, I don't know, the grocery list with your children. Like, okay, we're going to do the grocery list in French or in whatever your language is.
Right.
And
things that they want to know.
Yeah, maybe at the beginning they write it poorly, but it's question to start with little things.
Yeah. And then, don't bite off more than you can chew.
Yes.
Sure. But with an older kid, you can, ask them what they want. You can talk to them about their preferences. It's not like these little blank slates like a newborn where you're putting all the effort in. You can work with them. You can play the games like you were talking about, all those fun games. I can't do that yet. My kids barely understand the memory game. He just picks up 10 cards and I'm like, no, you got to put them back. So I think there are advantages.
They're definitely
both sides.
There are definitely advantages, because when they're little, you don't even know if they understand you in the common language. So not even if you switch the language.
There's years of just continuous effort without any knowledge if you're doing it right or not.
Exactly. You don't have the feedback, if they understand or not. But when they're 7, 8, 9, they can
have more fun.
Yeah, you can just and they have as well more patience and more understanding that you're trying to do this.
Oh, yes.
Why you're doing this now, where you're just talking to him in French, doing all those gesture to make him understand, and not.
For sure.
I think that you can start whenever you want.
Yeah, I think that's a really great message. And I'm so happy that you agreed to be a guest, because you have so much wisdom and your kids are old and you've got this amazing trilingual family. just think
Oh,
it's,
thank you. That's very
yeah.
nice. But yes, I'm always a bit scared when I talk about, not scared, but because yes, there's a lot of research on how this work, and
Mhm.
but each family, each parents will apply it uh, the best they can.
Right.
So I'm always a bit, I don't want to be like, oh, this is how you have to do it, or
No, I don't think you came off that way. And I think that's the whole premise of my podcast is let me interview everyone because everyone has done this differently.
exactly.
I'm not making one podcast episode with one family that has the answer to this question.
Mm.
I just like hearing how everyone is going about it. And even people that are just bilingual themselves, how did they become bilingual? I think it's just a fascinating journey that many people are on and we don't talk about. I've had friends on the podcast that I've learned so much about because we never get to sit down, even though we're friends, we just don't sit and talk about language.
That's so nice. I mean, a podcast about that, because that's what you say. I mean, I have friends from Canada that speaks French and English. We just stick to one language sometimes, English or French, and we never talk about how they raise their kids or how they do it, how they manage it, and it's interesting for others' family to know it, to know the experience.
Yeah,
and I wish, I wish 20 years ago I had more information and more contact with multilingual family.
I encourage anyone listening, if you are raising children or hoping to raise children multilingually, to reach out. There are many groups. There's Facebook groups, Instagram groups. There's all sorts of ways you can connect with other families.
No, now it's amazing. And it's, I think it's being part of this community to help one another and learn from others' experience. It's the best method you can have.
Right.
And pick what is better for your family in the place and in the moment you are.
Yeah. And I think people come up with all sorts of ideas that I personally wouldn't have thought of. And I can say, oh, perfect, let me try that. And, drop it, take it or leave it if it doesn't work. But just having all this creativity and all these different ways combined, then we can just learn from each other, or even just hear other people's struggles, help them out. I just think there's a lot that a community will give us. And, more than ever, I know we all say this now, pandemic, and we're all stuck at home, but I think it's so true that more than ever, we need these connections. We need to feel like we're not just in our little nuclear families. If they're, 1, 2, 5, 10 people, whoever is in our little bubble, we need to stretch our arms and reach and, know that others are out there and just have others with the same interest. So at the end of every episode, I like to ask the guests to teach us, one word in their languages. And, it could be a different word for different languages. I know you've got multiple languages. So is there a word or a phrase you would like to teach us?
I love a word in French that is pamplemousse.
Oh, yeah.
You know what it means. And I like the sound of it. I think that's one of my favorite word in French. And it's how you say it in English?
A grapefruit.
Grapefruit, yeah.
So in high school, we always picked our own names, and just to have, it was easier. I did this as well as a teacher. It's easier as a teacher to not have to say these very American names, to just say a French name. So my French name was Monique, and I continued that tradition when I was a teacher. But my friends, I think it was maybe our last year of French, my teacher just let us pick whatever. I had a friend in high school he picked the name pamplemousse because it's a funny sounding word.
It's a nice word.
My favorite French word is coquelicot.
Oh yeah,
it's also a fun one. And it's a beautiful flower. It's the poppy flower. But I just think it's so fun to say coquelicot.
Coquelicot. Yeah, no, it's true. There's some, I guess in every language, there's something. I love in English, I love lullaby. I think it's very nice. So.
That's right. Yeah, I've never thought about it, but it is nice. Lullaby. When I was in school, we would have these different bulletin boards, and we'd always try and advertise the languages. And we did a project where we had pick your favorite word, and we had the French and the Spanish and the Latin kids put their favorite word, and they had to make a poster. So they had the word, how to pronounce it, a picture of it, and a sentence. And that was a really fun project.
An idea.
Yeah, it was just a really fun project. they could do that with online as well. But it was fun because the kids around the school would like see these words, and it, the sentence that these kids decide, they would always write really funny sentences. These were high school, like freshmen. But the words that would come up, it was either like a word that they liked the meaning of, like amour was like love, but sometimes it was like the phonetic of it, the sound of it.
Yes.
And it's just fun to think about, like, you've been studying French this many years. What is your favorite word? I've never thought about my favorite English word. I should probably think about it.
You should think.
Yeah. It's hard with your native tongue. I take so much for granted.
Yes. Definitely.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure speaking with you.
No, thank you either. It was really nice to talk to you and meeting you in person.
Yeah. And I hope we'll stay in touch. And
yeah, definitely.
So that's the end of my conversation with Molly. But as I mentioned earlier, she and I had a lot to talk about. And unfortunately, a lot of things had to be cut out of this episode. So she and I will be recording a bonus episode for you guys coming up soon. So stay tuned. If you don't follow me on Instagram, I invite you to come follow me at The Future is Bilingual, all one word. If you don't do Instagram, you can always email me at tfibpodcast@gmail.com. And I want to take a second to thank people who filled out the listener survey. It is still open if you haven't done it. And I've gotten a lot of good answers, especially on topics you'd like to hear. And I think Molly answered a lot of those. People were asking about being an expat, keeping a minority language alive, balancing, maintaining different languages, having teenagers, different struggles when language learning. So this interview was really helpful, I think, for a lot of those topics. And I always am looking to hear more of what you'd like to know about. So please go fill out that survey. You can find it in my bio on Instagram. If you don't do Instagram, please just send me an email and I will send you the link. It is a survey on Gmail, so you don't have to be on social media to fill it out. I also have a survey that is if you'd like to be a guest. So again, you can email me or find that in my Instagram profile page. So thank you again for listening to this episode. And if you enjoyed it or you're enjoying this podcast in general, the best thing you can do is to share it with a friend, share it on your social media, or leave me a rating and review. That would be really helpful and I would appreciate it so much. Thank you, and I wish you guys the best, and we'll have an episode out for you guys soon. Take care.